Good morning and welcome to our January 29th Super App office hours. We just want to do a quick technology check before we get started. If you could indicate in the chat or via the yes, no functions, if you can hear me clearly and if you can see our shared screen. Great. Thank you all so much. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started this morning with our office hours. Our agenda this morning looks similar to our other days. We're going to start with a review of the school system planning. There are a couple of updates and things we want to bring to your attention that you can make sure you include in your super app. We want to make sure also that if you have questions this morning, please make sure that you place your questions into the chat along with your name and your email address. Make sure that you please place your name and your email address along with your question in the chat box. All right, again, starting with our agenda, we're going to review our school system planning information again. We have just one non-public reminder from the federal support team. Grants management has a couple of reminders that they want to go through with everyone, and then we will open the floor for questions. And then we'll remind you of the support that we have around the this particular process. All right, our 21-22 school system planning review. Of course, by now, if you've been on any of the Super App office hours before, you know that all things Super App are housed in the school improvement library that's on the department's website. You can access all of these decks. You can access the recordings to the office hours, and so on and so forth in the school improvement library. You also have access to the presentations that were conducted for the Super App launch. They are also there. And then once this deck is made available in any of the other decks that are actually already available, these links are live and you can click on them to take you to the information. As you all are aware, our Super App process, we begin by identifying priorities. The school systems review their data and identify priorities for the coming year. Then you begin to work on and develop an aligned budget. So school systems budget formula funds and request competitive funds in alignment with those priorities that have been identified. And then you work to begin to implement with support. So school systems implement approved plans with support from systems relations team and professional learning partners. The school system planning guide, one of the most important tools that you guys have probably been using throughout this process. It provides guidance on how a school system will build a plan and submit Super App for formula and competitive funds to support that plan. And again, it is also located in our school improvement library, but available on any of our previous decks from Super App office hours. If you click the link, it will take you to the document. All right, so looking at the continuing priorities for 21-22. Next school year, CIR and UIRA schools will continue to focus on these priorities. You're going to continue to focus on high quality curriculum in all grade levels, high quality professional development for all teachers on the selected curriculum, high quality assessments, teacher preparation partner to address schools' greatest needs, increase school-based capacity through content leader and mentor teacher participation, and student planning partners for the transition to college and/or professional career. On the chart, you'll notice that, of course, the priority is listed, which are those that I just went through. And then you notice that it will indicate for your CIR or your UIRA school if it is required. New or improved priorities. So next school year, CIR and UIR schools will have some additional required and or optional priorities. So the improved priorities for 21-22 would be participation in school support institutes and certified ancillary mentor teachers. For new priorities, you have K-2 literacy content leaders and culturally responsive PD. And again, the chart provides you with a visual of whether the priority is new or improved, the actual priority, and then whether it's required or optional for your CIR, UIRA, or your UIRD school. For 21-22 UIR discipline requirements. Why are we focusing on this? In order for students to be successful, they must engage in a positive, inclusive, and culturally responsive learning environment that develops social, emotional, and academic skills to cultivate personal agency and lifelong success. Louisiana will build the capacity of educators to provide students the unique support they require to be successful both personally and academically. New for the 21-22 school year for UIRD schools will focus on professional development focused on unconscious bias, culturally responsive teaching, culturally responsive leadership, or diversity, equity, and inclusion training. All right, we have a school improvement best practices update. School improvement best practice, WT 4.1. Super App item WT 4.1 enables school systems to request optional competitive funding for CIR schools to implement a variety of school improvement best practices. When requesting funds in Super App, school systems should list each CIR school and the best practice or practices to be implemented at each site in the additional information box on the School Improvement Best Practices tab. An example is provided for you below. In the additional information box for Beignet Elementary, it is listed the actual CIR school and then the best practice or practices. So instructional leadership team support, team collaboration support. For Pelican Middle School, the same. You are listing the CIR school, and then you are following that with the best practice, instructional leadership team support and teaching standards support. Thirdly, you have again your CIR school that you are listing, Mardi Gras High, and the best practice, instructional leadership team support. So please make sure that you're mindful of this when you are working on WT 4.1. In addition, also in the additional information box, school system should include a funding request of $8,700 per site for portal access and coaching support at each CIR school, which is implementing at least one best practice. So we're going to add a little bit to the example from the previous slide. In the additional information box, you have already listed your CIR school. You have already listed the best practice or practices that you will be implementing. And now we're asking that you make sure you place that funding request for portal access and coaching support for each school at a cost of $8,700 per site for the portal access and coaching support. So the example provided would be the 3 schools that you have listed: Beignet Elementary, Pelican Middle, Mardi Gras High. times $8,700 for each site for the portal access and coaching support, which would be a total of $26,100. All right, there's another update here for literacy coaching and interventions. This is going to be WT 5.1. Super App item WT 5.1 enables school systems to request optional competitive funding for CIR and UIR academic schools to support the salary and benefits of literacy coach positions. When requesting funds, identify the following in the additional information box on the WT 5.1 tab: the name of each CIR, UIRA site to be supported by a literacy coach, and an overall summary of the percentage of time literacy coaches will support teachers in grades K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. Note the total percentage should equal 100% and represent the time of all literacy coaches. Additional information. An example is being provided. CIR UIRA sites, Beignet Elementary, Pelican Middle, and Mardi Gras High. And then you're going to provide the time spent supporting K through 5 teachers, 6 through 8 teachers, and 9 through 12 teachers. As you notice, the grade bands are split. So make sure that your information in the additional information box for WT 5.1 looks like this example. All right, so some key actions for January, and this information can be found on page 13 of your school system planning guide. You want to make sure that you've completed your contacts and assurances in the central data in the EGMS system, and you want to begin entering your data into Super App. Those are your key actions that you should be taking in January. For February, also found on page 13 of the school system planning guide, you want to begin to verify your information. So once all of your information has been entered into Super App, the planning lead will verifies accuracy and receives approval from school system leadership. The planning lead ensures submission of the application by the due date of February 12th. The CIR-UIR review process and allocation of competitive funds. So once applications have been received on February 12th, LDOE staff will begin reviewing submitted plans for alignment to the CIR and UIRA requirements. Should LDOE require clarification of a supplied response, or in the event a school system has not met all CIR, UIRA approval criteria, in mid-March, LDOE will return the school system Super App for revisions. At the same time, LDOE will also provide each school system with a document that specifies areas of needed clarification or revision. In mid-April, LDOE will provide each school system with a document detailing final approval status, competitive funding allocations, a list of eligible expenditures, and a recommended approved CIR-UIRA implementation timeline. All right, so that takes us through our school system planning, review, and update. As mentioned earlier, from the federal support end, we just want to continue to remind you about this non-public reminder to upload the intent to participate and affirmation of consultation agreement forms. Your intent to participate form will be uploaded in the February Super App submission, so the first submission. Your affirmation and consultation and agreement will be uploaded in the second Super App submission. Make sure that you spell out the non-public schools and school districts' names. Do not abbreviate. Upload certified mail documentation, for example, the green cards and mail only if the non-public school has not returned the intent to participate form declining services. Do not upload non-public needs assessment forms, consultation agendas, etc. All right, now I will turn over to Mr. Randy Littleton, who will provide you with the grants management reminders.
Good morning, and thank you, Ms. Kenya. So, as Ms. Kenya noted, just a few reminders as we near the due date submission for Super App. Remember, as you work through the budget details, still receiving a couple calls on the funding not being available on the budget detail to budget. All funding must be invested on the allocations tab prior to your funds being available on the budget detail. So again, when you go in, before you can complete the budget detail, you must first invest the funding on the allocations tab. Your non-public budget detail is not required for the original submission of Super App. The February 12th submission will be done without the completion of your non-public budget detail. Once you submit, consistency will run, and of course, one of the areas that is often overlooked is that all contact information and assurance information must be completed. So just a quick recap here, your contact information is located in LEA Central Data, and the contacts that are required for this submission would be your central contacts and your Super App formula contacts, which include your ESSA, IDA, Migrant Education, and Carl Perkins. The same is true for assurances, again, in LEA Central Data. The assurances that must be completed in order to pass consistency will be your common assurances. And then those Super App assurances, again, including IDA, ESSA, Migrant Education, and Carl Perkins. Budget indirect cost, we brought this up once before, but again, just to walk back through, in order to prevent as many potential warnings or consistency check errors, we have provided you with a recommended sequence that you should go through as you complete Super App. So your first step would be to complete the required fields on the ESSA Equitable Share page. The reason that's your first step, remember Title II and Title IV funding operate a little differently than your other funding when it comes to indirect cost. Those indirect charges are actually taken off the top. So by completing this step first, it adjusts your available funds to the correct amount, so that as you move to step 2 and begin to invest your funding on the allocations page, you have the accurate available amounts, and it eliminates a potential loop that you could be in. And again, just noting that Title II and Title IV already have the equitable share deducted. Step 3 would then be to proceed to your budget details and create your expenditure lines for all direct charges that you're going to budget, and then complete the IDC for all of your funding except for Title II and Title IV on the budget detail pages. So all funding except to Title II and Title IV, your IDC is budgeted on the budget detail page. For Title II and Title IV is where you proceed to step 4 and return to the Budget IDC tab and budget the indirect cost for Title II and Title IV. Just a quick reminder here, as you prepare to do your submission, in the Super App Planning Guide, Appendix D, we do have the 21-22 Super App Checklist. This is just a good visual if you want to go through, and be ensured that each section that is required for the submission is complete. It just gives you a great visual and a quick way to check off to be sure that as you prepare to submit, all areas are complete. So we've had a couple questions come in on the student count data that is loaded into your 21-22 122 Super App. So we just wanted to provide a little guidance and clarity here. The data that's loaded into EGMS for your 2021 Super App is the age 5 to 17 student counts. It does not include your 18-year-olds, your 4-year-olds. It is the 5 to 17 count. The questions that have been coming in is that a couple of you have noticed that your FTP site data that you received isn't necessarily directly aligning with what is in EGMS. Again, we ask that you compare, knowing that what's in EGMS is your 5 to 17 age counts. Be sure that when you're comparing the two files that you're comparing the same thing here. But keep in mind that either count will work for your targeting rank and serve purposes, whether it be the student counts that are currently loaded in EGMS, or if it's your FTP counts, either count will work for your targeting rank and serve purposes. But you want to be sure when you are using these counts that you are in a posture of passing audit protocols. Again, either set of data works, just be sure you're in a posture of passing those audit protocols. And if you are replacing the provided counts, please ensure that your pre-K counts are excluded. So if you are going to adjust the student counts that are loaded into EGMS as they currently exist with FTP data, please be sure that your pre-K counts are excluded. And then for our last reminder, again, we've brought this up a few times, but we do offer the one-to-one technical assistance. The link is provided below. If you need some one-to-one technical assistance that you would like to schedule with LDOE staff, please use this link to schedule that call. And again, Super App submission deadline, February 12th. The non-public detail is not required, and the department will review and approve these budgets by April of 2021. All right, thank you. And Ms. Kenya, will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Littleton. So now we have gone through the school system planning review, reminded you of the non-public information to be submitted during the first submission, and provided you with some grants management updates. If anybody has any questions at this time, you can again, please place them into the chat. Please make sure when sending your question that you include your name and your email address. And we will pause for a moment to generate those questions, and then we'll be back to provide you with any answers that we are able to. One moment.
Ms. Jenkins, this is Mr. Cook. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So we see a question regarding the counts, and the question is, if a student is 5 years old and in pre-K, do you and in pre-K, do you count them? So I guess my response to that, we know that this is probably, in my mind, in rare instances, because most of your 5-year-olds are in kindergarten. But I would ask that districts look at the auditing protocols to see or determine if the auditor strictly looks at ages 5 through 17 regarding your accounts, or are they looking at the grade level of the student? So if they're looking at the grade level of the student, then you would not include them. But if they're strictly looking at ages 5 and older, then you could include them. So I see a question also regarding, it says, can you talk a little bit about funds for schools not labeled CIR or URR? Will any remaining funds be allocated to those schools? And is there a set amount, or does it depend on the details of your application? And so we're probably going to have to follow up, but I would say this for sure. When you're looking at the redesign funds, which are our state's Title I school improvement funds, those funds are strictly for schools identified for improvement, which would be our CIR and URR schools. So our other team members would have to address if other funding sources will be available in the competitive process for non-identified schools. But your redesign funds, they are strictly for schools identified for improvement. All right, another question regarding the counts again in terms of how the funds are awarded. It says, it's my understanding that the federal funds are allocated to K-12. So preschoolers turning 5 during the school year do not count. So just briefly regarding the, and I'm thinking in particular, this is Title I. So one of the key factors, as many of you know, for the Title I funding, when the feds send it to us, is that they look at the 5 through 17, what they call formula kids that are identified in the US Census. These are formula kids. And this is not a direct correlation with who you may have in your district and your school buildings who are identified as economically disadvantaged. So when we get the funding from Ed, then when they look at the major driver of the Title I funds, it's those 5 through 17 formula kids. Now, We take that allocation and that's where we, take off our state admin and school improvement funds, and then districts will get their allocation on what's remaining based on one of the main factors are those formula kids. So once it gets to you, you have the option then of whether or not you want to serve pre-K kids, because that is an allowable expenditure. So I'm not really sure I would say that the federal funds are allocated on a K through 12 basis. But Louisiana's definition of education is K-12. However, we do, as everyone knows, we definitely focus on birth through 12 in our initiatives because it all flows together.
We do have one additional question about when the submit button for Super App will appear. Is someone from the grants team able to answer that on this call?
Just initially, we haven't really discussed it internally. But we are in the final stages of just making sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed in terms of the functionality of the system. And most of you who have been around a while, you do know that we do sometimes open the system a little earlier. But if you would give us a chance to just look at where we are right now, and we'll get back with you with a more definitive date. But there is a great possibility that we could open it before February 12th.
And Mr. Cook, just adding to that, if that is the case, as soon as we have that go ahead on opening, we'll be sure to place that on the EGMS logon page. So that announcement will be visible as soon as we have that capability.
One other update, fresh off the presses here. So originally when we planned the Super App office hours, we had planned today as the final office hours. However, given that we pushed back the Super App deadline and that we've had strong attendance and participation in these office hours, we are looking to add 2 additional office hours. We're still working to confirm the Zoom information for those, but we can confirm the dates. So we will have another office hours at the same time next Friday, February 5th. And then we will hold our final office hours on Thursday, February 11th, also at 10 a.m. Be on the lookout in the school system newsletters for the Zoom information. It may very well be the same Zoom link, but we are still working to confirm that piece. And there are currently no other questions.
All right, thank you all for handling those questions this morning. I just want to move us along to the last slide where we remind you all of the support that we have for you, noting, of course, the School Improvement Library, the weekly newsletters, the System Leader monthly calls, the Super App planning support calls, our school system relations team, and these office hours that are being provided, all to support you with your planning and submission of the super app. If you have any questions, you know by now that you raise those with your school system relations teams first. And then if there is no resolve there, you move to the grants help desk. Make sure when you send your question to the help desk that you place super app in the subject line so that an expedited request can be provided. At this time, Mr. Brown, do we still have no questions?
Correct. No other questions have come in.
All right, thank you. All right, since we have no additional questions from anyone, we will thank you for joining us today. And as Mr. Brown noted, we will be back here at the same time on next Friday to provide you with some additional support as we grow closer to our super app submit date of February 12th. Thank you again for taking time out of your day to join us. We appreciate you and we support you through this endeavor. Have a happy Friday. Thank you.